Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my May wrap-up. I am very pleased to announce that for the first time since I think January, I actually did complete all of my TBR jar prompts. Now I will give the little addendum here that yes, I stretched the prompt on a couple of these, but it's my TBR jar and I can do that. So without any further ado, let us get into what I read. I had actually a really good reading month in May, which shocks me. I had been kind of not reading a ton over the last few months. I wouldn't really call it a reading slump. I just slowed my pace way down. I was reading a lot of really chunky high fantasies, and I don't want to say that I was burning myself out, but I was allowing myself to just take a step back and take some time. There were a couple of books in there that, if you've been watching my channel, you know it took me a really long time to read Oathbringer. It took me a really long time to read A Court of Silver Flames. So then jumping right into it, the very first book that I read in the month of May was The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. I don't know if I talked about this at all in my... I know that I had talked about that I was finishing it, I think. This is literally I read part of this in April, but I did finish it up in May and I adored it. So The Ninth Reign follows several characters. One who is a witch named Fel Noon. She is a witch, but she's not really your typical kind of witch. One is a very vain, elfin, vampire-like character by the name of Tourmaline. And then there's also an older black lady who is Vin, but it's short for Vintage, in case you were thinking Mistborn there. And she's kind of like an Indiana Jones type character. It's delightful. Elliot Brooks describes this book as if Indiana Jones were a middle-aged black lesbian and Geralt of Rivia was an elfin vampire, but more vain, and Vin from Mistborn all got together and tried to save the world. And it's kind of that. I mean, she's not wrong, and it is so good. I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a full 5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I cannot get my hands on the second one. It's literally impossible. I can't find it on Book Depository. It's not available on Kindle, so we're gonna have a long wait for book 2, but it was so good. Technically, I guess this would count for a couple of my prompts. One, I guess I don't really want to talk about. There's kind of an animal companion. We'll say that. We'll say that there's kind of an animal companion, but that's probably not what I'm going to count it for. But Jen Williams is a new to me author, so I could count it for that as well, but that is one of my prompts down, so it worked. The next book that I picked up in May was The Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. This is technically books 1 and 2 of the Right Era Revelations. When I was looking up reading order for all of the Right Era stuff, I kind of said to start with these. Mostly you follow two main characters who go by Hadrian and Royce. They are thieves for hire. They are hilarious. They argue like an old married couple, and they, in the first book, get hired to steal a sword, but it kind of shoves them into a big political plot that they are then blamed for. There's an assassination, they are in jail, they get broken out of jail. It's a whole hilarious thing. I actually really enjoyed the first book a lot. Honestly, I think I would give the first part of this book a 5 stars, and then in the second book you follow them as well, but it's a couple of years later. They are once again hired, this time to help a young woman and kill a beast that is terrorizing her town, and they get dragged into more political stuff, and it's just a great time, honestly. I really enjoyed reading it. It's such a quick read. It's very easily digestible. As a whole, I ended up giving both of the books 4 stars, but I did really enjoy it. I can't wait to move on to the second compilation, I guess, books 3 and 4 in the series. I really enjoyed my time with Royce and Hadrian. They are definitely two really interesting characters to follow. They're really entertaining, and Michael J. Sullivan, his writing is just, it's easy. It's easy to get into, it's easy to read, it's easy to follow, and I generally enjoy that in certain fantasies, just because sometimes you just get into some very heavy high fantasy and it bogs you down and it slows you down. This was definitely not that. The next book that I read in May was The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. This I actually read purely on audiobook. I don't think I actually ever picked it up physically. It was okay. I think I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. The audiobook was fantastic. If you want to see more of my thoughts, I talk about it very in depth on one of the reading vlogs that I posted, I believe, last week. I had some issues with the storytelling style. I just didn't see the point. I know John, I ordered the second book for John, so he'll be getting to that at some point, and he'll let me know if the writing style changes in the second book, because that was a big sticking point for me. I really don't know if I would move on to the rest of the series purely because of that. But the story itself was not terrible, I guess. I could see myself getting interested in the second book if that changes. So all of that to say, you follow a character named Kieran in 2 different parts of his life. One part of his life, he's telling you the story of what happens to him after he becomes enslaved, and in the other part of the story, somebody is telling his own story to him of what happened about a year to, no, it can't be more than a year, about a year prior to the events of his story that he is telling you. I don't know that my vlog is any more coherent, but I guess if you want to see any more of my thoughts on this, go ahead and watch that. I did give this a 3 out of 5 stars. Technically, this would count, I guess, as like a book about books, purely because, and this is where I start to stretch my prompts a little bit, but purely because the 2 characters telling you the story are speaking it into a, I don't know, like a magical recording stone, I guess, and a different character that you meet partway through the story is then like transcribing it down and adding his own thoughts, so it's kind of like you're reading his compilation of the story, and that is why I'm saying it could be a book about books, because technically he has transcribed it into a book. It is what it is. The next book I don't have a copy of physically, so I'll pop it over here, but that is Shortfall by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is book 2 in the Founders trilogy. I read Foundry Side in January, I think. Maybe February, I'm not really sure, earlier this year, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters, I loved the cool magic system, I loved the writing style, and that was honestly no different for Shortfall. I will say that I think that I enjoyed Shortfall just a little bit less. It had not quite the characters that I loved as much in the first one, without trying to give anything away, and there were some things that broke my heart as far as this one goes, again trying not to give anything away, but yeah, I enjoyed Foundry Side more than Shortfall. I really hope there's not a super long wait for the third book, because I want to know what happens next. It was explosive. The events were explosive. It was energetic. Why don't we go with that? It was very fast-paced, and the ending was a lot for me to deal with. So yeah, I enjoyed Shortfall. It follows the events of Foundry Side. If you haven't heard about what Foundry Side is, you follow Sanchia, who is a thief. She has been hired to steal something for a high-paying client, and when she steals it, she actually kind of just ends up stealing that thing from the client instead, and it turns out to be a magical talking key, which sounds lame, but I promise you it's not. And the magic system is awesome. It's called scribing. It involves like writing sigils on various objects, and that makes them change the way their reality works. So like you can scribe a wheel to make it think that it's rolling downhill so that the wheels keep turning, but it's actually on a flat surface, and it's kind of a self-propelled wheel. Things like that. It's really cool. The magic system is great. I know the humor is not for everybody, but honestly, that immature, like, just out there humor was it for me. I adored it. Yeah. Foundry Side is definitely one of my top series that I've been reading this year, so I can't wait to see the third one and see what happens there. I ended up giving Shortfall a 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, like I said, I liked it less than the first one, but, like, not so much less that it wouldn't still get a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I will go back and say that The Ruin of Kings could also meet a book that I don't remember much about, because I can tell you how the story was told, but as far as the actual events of the story, they're not really sticking in my head. John made a comment about that book earlier on, and I was like, when did that happen? He's like, oh, right at the end. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't remember that at all. So yeah, maybe we'll use it for that instead. I don't know. We're kind of just fitting these prompts into slots as we go. The next book that I ended up reading was Fireborn by Rosaria Munda, and I read this book so fast. for me. I finished this last weekend pretty much in a day. I mean, I had really only gotten like a couple of chapters into it before that. I adored this book. There's not much for me to say about it that hasn't already been said. It is a YA fantasy that takes its inspiration from the Russian Revolution and from Plato's Republic and a bunch of things that you can see in a bunch of videos that Elliot Brooks has talking about it, and the Library of Alexandria talks about it. Jessie from The Bookish Mom talks about it. Everybody loves this book, and it is well deserved, let me just say. Essentially, you follow two characters, Annie and Lee, who are training to be dragon riders in a world where previously the dragon riders were tyrants, I guess you could say. They did not treat their people very well. They killed a lot of people. They believed they were better than everybody else. And essentially that system of government was overthrown, and they are trying to make dragon riders and education and everything more accessible for everybody. It is still a flawed system. You figure that out as you read through the book, and Annie is a character who was previously a serf, and she tested into the dragon riding program, and she has to deal with a lot of blowback purely because of how she was born and all of that stuff. Lee is an Anastasia-like character who he was a part of the Dragonborn family. Somebody rescued him from being murdered when his entire family was being murdered, and he is hiding that secret about himself and from everybody else around him, so nobody knows that he was actually born into dragon riding, and he's very, very good at it. He takes to it very, very naturally. You follow their story, and it's a great story. It's fast-paced. It made me cry in public, which is not a thing that happens very often. Like, I cry during books, fine, I do that a lot, but not in public. Like, if I'm in public and I'm reading something like that, I can usually, like, hold it in and rein it in. That did not happen. I cried in public while I was reading this book. I loved it so much that when John and I were at Barnes & Noble's yesterday, I ended up picking up Flamefall. Yes, the covers do not match. No, I don't think I will be replacing this, just because frankly I do kind of like the original cover a little bit more. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Are they even the same size? Okay, they're at least the same size, but yeah, we're dealing with it. We're just gonna have to look at them like that on the bookshelves. It's fine. Anyway, I picked up Fireborn. I adored it. It got a full 5 out of 5 stars. I am shoving Flamefall to the top of my TBR. I cannot wait to see what happens after the end of the events of the first book. And this also technically counts towards Animal Companions. I guess I had a really good Animal Companion month. This is going to be a very long wrap up because we are only about halfway through the books that I got through in May, so I apologize. If you're sticking with me this long, I appreciate you. The next book that I read was How to Be a Badass Vigilante, and that is by Michael Anderle. I had seen like this on NetGalley, and then I saw that it was already out. Like, it was a read now on NetGalley, and then I saw that it was already out and it was on KU, so I picked it up because the cover looks pretty cool. I'll pop it over here. I don't know, guys, I hated it. You follow a character whose name I don't even recall. You know what, this counts for a book that you can't remember much about, because I don't remember the names of anybody in this. I really didn't like it. You follow her, and in a previous series that I didn't actually know was a previous series, it was kind of not very well marketed that this was a continuation series. She picks up a book called How to Be a Badass Witch, and she learns how to be a witch, and then she becomes a vigilante with her newfound powers, and yeah, that's pretty much it. There were a lot of fairly misogynistic lines that I did not love, and I highlighted, and I will read a couple of the worst ones to you, but if you really want them, you can go ahead and check out my Goodreads review, because I did not like this book at all. I gave it 2 stars. It was really more like a 1.5. I don't really give out 1 star unless there was absolutely nothing like redeemable about it, but let's see, what did I say? All right, so there were a lot of moments in this book that bothered me. The one that bothered me the most was that the main, like, love interest, he had just found out that she was a witch, like she had told him, and he was kind of a pig, honestly, but he was like a nice guy, TM kind of pig, and so he couched it all under like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this because women aren't like that, and I'm not going to... He was very focused on other people's weight and what they were eating, and it was just gross. He was gross. I did not like him. And the main character... Here, let me just read you. We'll just do this. The first thing that I highlighted, which was at 6% into the book, was she had never been the sort of young woman who tried to manipulate men by playing on their sense of pity or sympathy, but this was a unique situation. We had just started the book, so it was not starting off on a great note. The next one was from the girl's point of view. At 7%, it's so weird the way we always want to find something in a man that seems incomplete and bring it to fruition ourselves. The next one, to give you a little bit of context, was quoted from the love interest, whose name I can't remember. His best friend is talking, and he was a pig also. And in conversation, he goes, I mean, most women lie, but it's a question of the size and frequency of the lies, and that's a big one. I don't love misogyny in books. That's pretty much where we're at. 35% in, the main love interest says, I promise I'm not going to do that thing where I keep asking over and over if all you can come up with is some non-committal whatever is fine with me in terms of what they were going to go and eat. 53%, an obese couple moved behind them and Kira was able to scooch in towards the table far enough to let them pass without being pushed over her food. Maybe not the absolute worst thing, to say. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't love it. There was a lot of misogyny. There was a lot of fat phobia. There was a lot of, phrases that hit wrong when it came to, other people eating, because the main girl, when she used her magic, it made her really hungry. I guess, it upped her metabolism a lot. So she was eating constantly. Think, if you've seen the first season of The Flash, when Barry first gets his powers and he's burning through calories nonstop, that's kind of what's happening here. Except here, it's from a misogynistic, fat-phobic point of view, and she's constantly eating, and he's constantly doesn't this embarrass you? And she's like, well, I mean, kind of. This is turning into a rant review of this book, and I really don't want to spend this long on it. I already ranted about it in a previous, vlog that I was reading it in. I did not like it. There's a couple more things that I have on here. Like I said, just, I did see one more highlight that I did want to bring up that I didn't like. And also, after the misogyny and the fat phobia, there was also this one character who seemed fairly unrelated to the rest of the plot, who they are from the United States and they were in Switzerland looking for a different magic user. This dude does not speak a lick of French or German or anything that is spoken in Switzerland, didn't speak any of it, and is there speaking with the character that they had tracked down, who had moved there from a country in Africa. I'm not really sure which one in particular, but he spoke French natively, and he was fluently speaking English to these characters, and this character was just constantly, correcting him on these phrases that he was using in English, as though, he wasn't already fluent in another language, and it was very patronizing. I was not a fan of that. It was, okay, no, we're not gonna give this book any more attention. I've already spent too long talking about it. I did not like it. I will not move on. It got 2 stars for me. It was probably more like 1.5. Do with that what you will. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about together for expediency's sake, but I read both A Dead Djinn in Cairo and The Haunting of Tramcar 015 by P. Jelly Clark. I listened to the audiobook for both of these. They're both on script. It was great. They were both really, really good. I enjoyed them a lot. And I'm not usually a short story person, so that was a different experience for me. I don't really do novellas that I'm not already invested in characters for. But in the first one, you follow a special investigator by the name of Fatma, and she is a special investigator for the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities in 1912 Cairo. It's alternate history, fantasy Cairo. It's fantastic. The entire world building. I love alternate history, and I love other mythologies, so it was just great being introduced to this world and these characters, and it was so fast. I mean, the first novella was only an hour and a half long audiobook, so I think I finished it in 45 minutes. And it was really, really good. I ended up giving the first one a 4 out of 5 stars. She is investigating the death of a dead djinn in Cairo, and it's a murder mystery, so she's trying to figure out who killed him and why. And then the second one, you follow a couple of different characters, and that is Senior Agent Hamed and Agent Ansi, and it's still a mystery. They still work for the same ministry, but this time they are trying to figure out why, or, well, if this tram car is haunted, and if so, what or who is haunting it, and they try and figure that out. It was a little bit longer, and because of that, I think I got a little bit more invested in these characters. I think that this was more of a 3-hour audiobook. So you got a little bit more of them and of the world. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed both of them. I can't wait to move on. I think that the full-length novel just came out, Master of Jinn. I can't wait to read that as well. But yeah, 4 out of 5 for the first one and 5 out of 5 for the second one. I really recommend the audiobooks. They were fantastic. The next book that I started in May was The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. I had an arc for this from NetGalley. It had actually been sent to me in my YouTube email, and I actually really enjoyed this. You follow Cecilia Bassingthwaite, who is a lady pirate. She's just trying to be promoted in the Wisteria Society of Pirates, and it's like, think alternative fantasy history romance as far as this genre goes, because it is in an alternative history London in which the society ladies can also be pirates, and they are very polite and they dress very nicely, but they rob people, and they don't just rob people like from ships. They rob people from flying battle houses that they fly via a spell, and it's absurd and it's delightful. And she falls in love with Ned Lightbourne, who is also a captain of his own ship that has been pushed, well, house that has been pushed off of a cliff, so he's homeless. It was great. I mean, it was fantastic. I talk about it a little bit more in the vlog that I posted, so you guys can see more of my thoughts in there, but I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was adorable. It didn't take itself too seriously. The humor was very tongue-in-cheek, very entertaining. The story was cute. Yeah, I liked it. It was an adorable romance that I think that if you like historical romance, or if you liked The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry that I read earlier on in this year, you'll probably like this as well. And then last but not least, the last book that I finished in May was The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This I listened to purely on audiobook. I finished it in 2 days. I loved it. I talk about this in the vlog that I posted as well, so you can see some of my thoughts there. But essentially, you follow 2 characters, one of which is the Emperor's daughter. He won't name her as his heir, and she doesn't know why, but that essentially means that she cannot learn bone shard magic from him, and he will not teach it to her, so she decides to take it upon herself to learn bone shard magic. You also follow Jovis, who is a character who's just trying to find his wife, and he just keeps kind of getting dragged into good guy shit. Like, he keeps getting dragged into rescuing people and saving children and all of this stuff, and he doesn't want to, and like getting dragged into a revolution that he doesn't want to be a part of. And it's adorable. Like, I feel so bad for the guy, because all he wants to do is his smuggling job and find his wife, and instead he ends up with a precious animal companion named Mephi, who's kind of like a cat mixed with an otter that talks, and he's adorable, and I want one. But instead he's dragged into all of this other stuff on the side. The audiobook was so good. I really liked it. I really liked the narrator. I liked everything about the entire plot of this book. I cannot wait for the second one, which will be coming out soon. Yeah, but that is it for my books that I finished in May. This video is so long. I'm going to need to edit out so much. I was not expecting quite so prolific of a reading month. I don't really know how that happened. I have been averaging like 6 or 7 books over the last few months, and we blew that out of the water this month, which is a good thing. I'm okay with it. It just really surprised me. Hopefully this doesn't lead me straight into a reading slump, because that often happens to me when I have a really, really fantastic month and then I kind of burn myself out. Not that any of you care about that. But as far as my TBR jar prompts go, my book about books or libraries, we can say The Ruin of Kings. We can also kind of say Shortfall, because technically, I'm not going to say who, but there is a kind of library of scribing in that book as well. Fireborn was also very, very deeply about, I don't know if you could really call it a book, but there was a poem, like an epic poem in there that they quoted from a lot. So that kind of counts as well. And How to Be a Badass Vigilante is also very much about that book, How to Be a Badass Witch. So I guess that prompt is well covered. For a new to me author, most of them were new to me this month. Jen Williams, Michael J. Sullivan, Jen Lyons, Rosario Munda, Michael Anderle, P.J. Clark, India Holton, Andrea Stewart. They were all new to me authors. Has an animal companion. The Ninth Reign had an animal companion. The Bone Shard's Daughter had an animal companion. Fireborn had an animal companion. So yeah, animal companion, check. A book that you can't remember much about. I'm gonna say How to Be a Badass Vigilante, because mostly I just want to block it from my memory, and I don't want to remember much about that book. So we're gonna say that. And the Ruin of Kings, because there's parts of that just, I got so bored listening to certain parts of that storyline that I was like, I don't know what's going on and I don't really care. And then finally, a book title that is or contains a name. I'm gonna say the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, because the Wisteria Society is the name of the society in that book. Is that technically what I meant when I wrote that prompt? No. Are we keeping it that way anyway? Yes. So, that being said, it is time to draw 5 new prompts, which I'm going to try and do as quickly as possible because this video is absurdly long already. So without any further ado, here's the TBR jar. So the first one is to finish a series. For the record, if you've been paying attention, we have completely and totally abandoned the genre aspect of this because I've barely been finishing my prompts as it is, and this is where we're at. Prompt number 2 is booktube or Twitter pics. So I guess I will post a poll on Twitter, most likely at some point, and see what people want me to read this month. I will have to figure out what my choices are going to be on that, so we'll wait. I'll probably, hopefully, if things work out, put it in a vlog. Prompt number 3 is a book that will make you happy. Prompt number 4 is a beautiful cover. And prompt number 5 is a borrowed book. So hopefully this won't be too bad. Those are not prompts that are super 100% specific, which I know I try to do with most of my TBR jar stuff, but these are pretty good. These are things that I've mostly been reading anyway, and that hopefully means that I will have another successful month in June. June's gonna be pretty busy for us. My birthday is on the 11th, and we are going to be driving home at the end of the month as well to visit some family. We have a friend's wedding to attend, so it's going to be slammed. Hopefully I can get a lot of reading done because we're just going to be driving for a lot of those visits, and it's about a 10-hour drive one way. So hopefully some reading will be getting done. I would really like it if I had another successful reading month. In terms of what I'm going into the month having started, I did pick up The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. That's what it's called, right? Yeah. This is the first book in the First Law trilogy. I am only like 40 pages in. I really don't have any thoughts about it so far. I'm going to spend the rest of the day sitting outside, enjoying the weather, and probably reading as much of that as I can. I also have picked up The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman because everybody has been talking about it, and I literally just, it sounds so good. Like, I just want to read it as fast as I can. And I also will be doing a buddy read for The Trader's Blade, I think is what it's called, right? The first Greatcoats book by Sebastian de Castell. I'll be doing a buddy read for that with Z from You Can't Catch Z and Lauren from Lightning Lavender. So we will be doing that. And yeah, I guess that is it. I have a lot of editing to do on this video, so I will probably be getting to that very shortly. If you guys liked this video, please give me a like and a subscribe. As usual, I will have all of the books that I talked about linked in the description down below, next to all of my social media and my Amazon wish list. And I think that is it for me today, guys, so I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!